She was still alive when the rope burned through her skin, not alive in the way people usually mean it. Not screaming, not fighting, just breathing in short broken pulls while the summer grass cut into her back and the sun baked her blood into the dirt. One leg was twisted wrong, trapped in a loop of coarse rope that had been dragged so hard it stripped the cloth clean off her calf. The other leg lay useless, dust-caked and shaken. Her name was Lila Monroe. She was 21 years old. Her ribs felt like they had been kicked in. Every breath came with a wet little rattle, and her hip burned so deep she could not tell if it was pain or something broken inside. And if no one stopped soon, she was going to die right there where the prairie didn't care enough to notice. The last thing she remembered clearly was the sound of hooves behind her. Not fast, not rushed, slow and patient, like whoever rode that horse already knew she could not outrun him. She remembered hands on her ankle, a laugh close to her ear, a voice telling her to stop pretending this was not the law. Then the rope went tight. It only lasted seconds, maybe a half minute. Long enough to ruin her, not long enough to finish her. The horse spooked at something and the pull changed. That was the only reason she was still breathing when the world stopped spinning. Lila had kicked and twisted until something in her hip screamed and the world went white. She had bitten the rope until her mouth filled with dirt. She had clawed at the grass until her fingers split, somewhere in the middle of it all. Her voice ran out. Fear does that sometimes, that it burns through words first. By the time the rope loosened, she was barely conscious. That was when the shadow fell over her. At first she thought it was him again. The same boot, the same weight in the air. Her body locked in reflex and her heart tried to tear its way out of her chest. She sucked in a breath so sharp it hurt and waited for the pull, but it didn't come. Instead, there was a pause, a stillness that felt wrong in a different way. Elias Caldwell stood over her with the sun at his back, the light catching the dust on his coat and the gray at his temples. 49 years old, broad-shouldered, the kind of man whose posture said he was used to standing between trouble and something weaker than himself. He had not worn a badge in years, but the habit of it was still written into the way he scanned the ground before he moved. He took in the rope first, then the bruises, then the way her chest barely rose. He didn't swear. He didn't shout. He dropped to one knee. Lila's eye fluttered open. Her vision swam. The world came in pieces, a hat brim, a weathered hand, a knife being drawn from a sheath. Panic slammed through what little strength she had left. No, she rasped, or tried to. It came out like air leaking through cloth. Eli's voice reached her, low and steady. The way men speak to frightened animals and wounded people. Easy, he said. I got you. She didn't believe him. She had heard men say that before. The knife moved to the rope. The sound of hooves carried faint on the wind. Lila's fingers dug into the dirt. Every instinct she had left screamed that time was gone. Her throat worked. She dragged the words out of somewhere deep and ugly and raw. Do it, she whispered. The knife pressed harder. The hooves sounded closer. Hurry up. Eli didn't rush. That was the strange part. Even with danger moving toward them, his hands stayed precise. He braced her ankle with one hand and sliced the rope with the other. One cut, then a second cut. The loop fell away, leaving raw skin and a purple groove like a brand. He kept his grip steady so her leg would not jerk the wrong way. When the last strand fell loose, he slid his arm under her knee to keep her leg from dropping wrong. Lila sobbed then, just once, more sound than tears. Eli leaned in close enough that she could smell dust and leather, and the faint, sharp bite of whiskey on his breath. You're safe for this minute, he said. That's all I promise. He glanced toward the rise behind them. The grass moved there, stirred by something heavier than wind. Eli made a decision without saying it out loud. He lifted Lila like she weighed nothing and carried her low through the grass, keeping his body between her and the sound. His horse waited where he had left it, reins loose, ears flicking. Eli settled her into the saddle with a gentleness that didn't match the violence she had known before. He mounted behind her and turned the horse off the trail. angling toward a land that folded and dipped enough to hide them. Only when the hooves faded again did Lila realize she was shaking. She sagged back against his chest, exhaustion crashing over her in waves, and the heat, the pain, the terror that refused to let go even now. "Don't take me back," she whispered. Eli felt the words more than he heard them. "Back where?" he asked. Her throat tightened. "Dodge City." The name landed heavy. Eli's jaw set. He knew Dodge City. He knew the men who wore law there like a costume. He knew what happened to girls who learned things they were not supposed to hear. He guided the horse toward his ranch near Fort Dodge, far enough from town that the noise of it could not reach, close enough that trouble sometimes wandered in anyway. Behind them, somewhere on the prairie, a man with a badge would realize his rope had gone slack. And when that man came looking for what he believed belonged to him, what would Elias Caldwell do? Hand the girl over and go back to his quiet retirement? Or stand in the way and reopen a fight he had walked away from years ago? If you were him, which choice would you make? Eli didn't ride fast. He lived like a rancher now, but he still moved like a lawman when trouble showed up. That surprised Lila more than anything else, after what she had just survived. She expected panic. She expected shouting or hard hands or a man who treated her like something fragile that might break if touched wrong. Instead, Eli guided the horse at a steady pace, cutting across the land where the grass grew taller and the ground dipped just enough to hide a trail. It felt strange to be moving without being chased. Her body sagged against him, every breath a reminder that she was still here. Pain sat in her leg like a hot stone, but it was a clean pain now, the kind that meant you were hurt, not hunted. They reached the ranch near Fort Dodge just as the sun began to drop. It was nothing special. A small house weathered by a wind, a corral that leaned a little too much to the east, one cottonwood tree that had seen better years, the kind of place most people would ride past without noticing. Eli noticed everything. He dismounted first, lifted her down slow, and set her on a bench by the door. He brought water. He brought a cloth. He didn't ask questions while he worked. That mattered more than he knew. Lila watched his hands as he cleaned the rope burn and checked the swelling. He listened to her breathing for a moment, then nodded like it hurt, but it was steady. They were steady hands, not gentle in a soft way, gentle in a practiced way. It's like someone who had done this before and learned when not to rush. "You're safe here," he said. She almost laughed. People had said that before too, but she didn't argue. She didn't have the strength for it. Inside the house smelled like coffee and dust and old wood. Eli set her on the bed in the spare room and stepped back, giving her space like it was something she owned. That was when the shaking started. It came from nowhere, or maybe it had been waiting for quiet. Lila curled her fingers into the blanket and stared at the ceiling until the beams blurred. Eli noticed anyway, but he didn't ask what happened right away. He set a mug of coffee on the table and sat in the chair by the window, facing out like he was standing guard even without a badge. When she finally spoke, her voice sounded smaller than she wanted it to. "Don't take me back to Dodge City." Eli didn't turn. "I wasn't planning to," he said, "but I need to know why." Lila swallowed. She had practiced this in her head 100 times. It still came out crooked. "I worked near the Long Branch," she said, "serving drinks, listening. Men talk more than they think when they believe no one's worth listening to." She paused, waiting for him to interrupt. He didn't. "I heard names." She went on. "Horses that were supposed to be seized. Some of them had the same cattle brand on their tack. A mark I'd seen more than once behind the saloon. Money that wasn't supposed to exist. And I heard one name too many times." Eli's shoulders tightened just a little. "Rourke Madsen," she said. That made him turn. Eli knew that name. He knew the smile that came with it. He knew how easy it was for a man like that to hide behind a star and call it law. "He said I was being taken in," Lila continued. Said it calm, like he was doing me a favor. "Then we weren't heading for the jail anymore." Her hand trembled as she reached into the pocket she had sewn into her skirt and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "Not much, just enough. I grabbed this when he wasn't looking." She said, I didn't know what it meant. I just knew it was why he smiled. Eli took the paper and read it slow. He didn't curse. He didn't whistle. He just breathed out through his nose. That's trouble, he said. The kind that doesn't stop looking. Lila nodded. I ran 'cause I heard about you. She said, people talk. They said you used to be sheriff. They said you quit because you wouldn't play along. They said if anyone still remembered what right looked like, it was you. Eli shook his head. People like to make stories, he said. She met his eyes. I needed one to be true. Silence settled between them. Not heavy, just honest. Eli folded the paper and handed it back. If Madsen was willing to do what he did, he said, he won't let this go, and if he doesn't come alone, someone else is backing him. Lila felt cold despite the heat. There's a man, she said, cattle money, big land. I don't know his name, but I saw the way Madsen listened to him. Eli looked toward the window again, toward the road that led back to town. Then this isn't just about you anymore, he said. It's about whether the truth gets to breathe. He stood and checked the door, the windows, the yard, not frantic, prepared. Lila watched him move and felt something unfamiliar settle in her chest. Not safety exactly, something sturdier, like a fence put up the right way. I have to ask you something here. Do you like stories like this? The kind where quiet people have to decide if they will stand or step aside. Let me know. I keep these stories for folks who still care how things turn out. Eli returned with a blanket and draped it over her shoulders. Get some rest, he said. Tomorrow we make choices. She closed her eyes, but sleep didn't come easy, because somewhere between Dodge City and that small ranch near Fort Dodge, a man named Rourke Madsen was realizing his rope had been cut, and when he came looking for what he believed was his, he would not come politely. Lila slept, but not deeply. Sleep came to her in pieces now. Short stretches where her body shut down before fear could follow. She dreamed of rope tightening, of hooves circling just out of sight, of a voice that kept saying her name like it owned it. Eli didn't sleep at all. He sat at the small kitchen table with a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. The folded paper lay beside his hand. He didn't look at it again. He already knew what it meant. He was not studying the past. He was listening for the future. The ranch was quiet in the way only rural places get at night. No train whistle, no saloon laughter, just insects and wind and the occasional creak of wood settling. Eli checked the windows once more, then the door, then the yard. Habit more than fear. That was when the horse stopped outside. He didn't ride in fast. He rode in like he belonged there. Close enough that Eli could hear leather shift and a boot touch dirt. Someone had arrived who didn't need to hurry. The knock came next. Slow, firm, confident. Eli didn't answer right away. He moved to the side of the door instead of in front of it. Another habit, one he had learned long before retirement. The knock came again. Evening. A man called. Calm. Polite. Sheriff business. Lila stirred in the back room. Eli opened the door just enough to see who stood on the porch. Deputy Rourke Madsen smiled like he was visiting an old friend. His hat sat just right. His badge caught the lamplight. His eyes stayed cold. Caldwell, he said. Didn't expect to see you out here. I didn't expect company, Eli replied. Especially this late. Madsen held up a folded paper. I'm looking for a young woman, he said. Ran off from town. Name's Lila Monroe. Thought you might have seen her. Eli took the paper and glanced at it. He saw what he had expected to see. A seal pressed too fast. A signature that leaned the wrong way. Sloppy work for a man who usually took his time. This isn't right, Eli said. Madsen's smile tightened. You sure about that? He asked. Interfering with an arrest isn't a small thing. Eli handed the paper back. So is forging one, he said. For a moment, neither man spoke. The air shifted. Madsen stepped forward. Eli stepped sideways. The deputy tried to force his way in then. Not sudden, not wild, like he had already decided how this would go. Eli blocked him, shoulder to chest, and the two men hit the porch rail hard enough to rattle the boards. The lantern tipped and fell. Darkness swallowed them. The sound of the fight was ugly and close. Grunts. Wood cracking, boots scraping. Madsen swung first and caught Eli along the jaw. Eli took it and drove back with his weight, shoving the deputy into the post. Inside the house, Lila sat up in bed, heart pounding. She didn't scream. She didn't run. She listened. Outside, Madsen reached for his gun. Eli kicked his wrist. The revolver skidded across the porch and dropped into the dirt. Madsen cursed and lunged again. Eli grabbed his coat and shoved him off the porch. Both men hit the ground hard. The deputy rolled and came up fast, blood at his lip now. Eyes no longer smiling. This doesn't have to go bad, Madsen said. Eli stood his ground. It already did, he replied. For a split second, it looked like Madsen might try again. Then he noticed something Eli had hoped he would not. A second set of boot prints in the dust near the fence line, not fresh enough to be tonight, but fresh enough to tell a story. Madsen's eyes narrowed, and his smile returned like a knife sliding back into his sleeve. You think this place is quiet, he said. You think being out here makes you invisible. He backed away slowly. This isn't over. And then he was gone, mounting his horse and riding off into the dark. But he rode with one hand lower than before, pressed against his side, because Eli's last shove had driven him into the porch post harder than he wanted to admit. Eli stood there until the sound faded completely. Only then did he breathe out. Lila stepped onto the porch, wrapped in the blanket Eli had given her. She was shaking again, but she was standing. He knows, she said. Yes, Eli replied. And he didn't come to take you tonight. She frowned. Then why come at all? Eli looked down at the dirt, where something glinted faintly. He bent and picked it up. Not a badge, not a button. A small metal token, stamped with a brand mark Lila recognized but could not place. He came to see if I would fold, Eli said, and to make sure someone else knew where you were. Lila felt a chill crawl up her spine. Someone else, Eli nodded. There's always someone else. He turned back toward the house. Pack light, he said. Tomorrow we don't wait for him to decide what happens next, because somewhere between Dodge City and that quiet ranch, Rourke Madsen was already telling another man that the old sheriff had stepped back into the fight. And that man would not knock first. They left before sunrise, not because Eli liked the dark. He didn't. He preferred seeing things clearly, but he knew men like Rourke Madsen did their best work when other people stayed still, and Eli was done staying still. Lila sat wrapped in a coat that was too big for her, her injured legs stretched carefully across the saddle. The pain had settled into a dull, steady ache, not gone, just quieter. Like it was waiting. They didn't take the main road. Eli cut them along a low trail that followed the bends of the land toward Fort Dot. The kind of route you learned only after years of watching where people didn't look. He rode with his head up and his eyes moving, the way he had when he still wore a badge. Old habits have a way of waking up when you need them most. Lila watched him from behind, taking in the way he never hurried but never drifted either. He moved like a man who had already measured the cost of every step and chosen to pay it anyway. You've done this before, she said quietly. Eli didn't smile. I used to believe standing still was enough, he said. Turns out it just makes it easier for the wrong people. They reached Fort Dodge by mid-morning. The air smelled of dust and horses and old iron. Soldiers moved about their business. Civilians kept their heads down. The world kept turning like it always did. Eli brought them straight to the marshal office. Thomas Granger was not an impressive man to look at. No polished boot, no fancy words, just a solid build and eyes that missed very little. He listened while Eli talked. He listened while Lila spoke. Then he asked 3 sharp questions that made Lila's stomach tighten. Dates, names, where she was standing when she heard it, what the ink smelled like. He read the paper once, then he held it closer to the light, like he was looking for the lie hiding in it. Only after that did he nod. That deputy has been circling trouble for a while, Granger said finally.